Alright, so when I left off, what I did was showed you guys how to get the top plate off. Like taking long bolts, running it through the top plate till it hits the ferrite and it lifts the top plate up, over the pole, and you just pull it off. If your bolts, only get the top plate up close to that, a lot of times you can set this motor in the floor, hold it with your feet, just get a nice jerk, the top plate will, come on off. So once you do that, what you guys want to do is prep the ferrite and the back of the top plate, as you can see. So what you're going to want to do, or what I did, is I stuffed this gap between the pole and the ferrite here right with a towel and just taped it to the ferrite because I just don't want any extra debris getting in there. And I'll just put some tape across the top of the pole as well. It doesn't really matter about that so much, but just any dust and stuff, it's just easier to keep it out of it, right? So at that point I used, a razor blade on a scraper and just went around and scraped all of it off that I could get off with a razor. And then what I did was I took some 80 grit sandpaper and just kept sanding it till it was smooth. You don't want to leave any of that old glue on there, old epoxy on there at all. Same way again with the back of the top plate. What I did is just use a wire wheel on the back of with my drill, and got it all off the back of the top plate, and then took some 80 grit and then some 60 grit and just, sanded it in a crosshatch pattern. Then I cleaned everything up with some nitromethane a couple of times, and then with some rubbing alcohol. That way the mating surfaces are really good and clean, as you can see. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and test fit everything. So what I told you, measure the outer diameter of your pole and the inner diameter of your top plate, and that's going to give you like the thickness you're going to need to make the shims. And like I told you, you can take popsicle sticks, depending on how thin your gap is, how wide the gap is. You may have to glue popsicle sticks together, like they're long, glue them together. And then you can sand them with sandpaper and just use your calipers to measure the thickness. If you have a really wide gap on some big motors and stuff, right? You can use paint paddles, cut them long ways, measure the thickness, cut them long ways, measure the thickness of the wood versus your gap. And you may have to stack them and, sand them down, or, you may just have to sand them, whatever. Like I said, you can 3D print them and all that, and that's pretty much what I have here. So at this point, I'm just going to test fit everything. And like I always tell everybody when they do this, it's best to test fit them. And again, like I said, you don't want any residual glue left on either mating surfaces because it can cause the top plate not to sit flat. If you leave it, get lazy, your ass gets lazy and leave a little bit, say right here, you didn't get it all off. Well, you can leave places where pockets of air can get in there and cause it not to bond properly. A lot of things can happen, and then the next thing you know, the motor falls off and like separates again. I mean, you could just have those kind of problems. I mean, shifts again, whatnot. I think it was earlier today I saw a guy showed this portion of his motor, like the T-yoke and the slugs were sitting down in this enclosure on a Kicker Solo X, and then the top plate, was still attached to the top assembly, the frame and all that. From what I could see in the video, it might have had some spots where it didn't look like the glue adhered very well. There wasn't much glue. Could have got it hot. In the instance of this one, this is what you can see the distressing here, like from the heat and stuff. I'm not saying that Curtis, the one that sent it to me, did this, but while he was playing it, it locked up. And I had the old coil, and I can show you, you see the rub marks in the pole here, right? And I'm not saying that Curtis done it, whoever he got it from could have abused it as well, but it's pretty chewed up in there. And that's not just from this thing like locking up when it played, because if you look close enough, you can see the voice coil winding through the former itself. So it's been chewed up pretty good. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see that really. Maybe you can, but anyways, you can see the voice coil, like you can see the copper windings through it right about in there. But a lot of times, man, when I tell you guys, like when you send me stuff, or like say I'll build you a subwoofer, and then like at some point something may fail. Like, like I cover like my workmanship, right? Like where I glue it up and this and that. You burning coils up and stuff, like, I don't cover that. But if it failed and you say you weren't doing anything that would cause it to fail, when you send it back, like When I tell you guys that, like, I can pretty much tell you what happened and what caused it, it's because I can. And, it's things like this. Like, this top plate came off due to, like, it just got hot over and over and over. It went through so many heat cycles that the glue just failed. And again, like, there's heat here, and this thing was played hard. I just showed you the coil. And again, I'm not saying that Curtis did it. It could have been, it could have been abused when he got it. But regardless, so at this point, what you can do is you can test fit everything. If you got shims, you at least need 3 points of contact for a shim, like say a peace sign. You want 3 points of contact at a minimum, because that will, that will give you 3 points to, like, it will be centered. You can't just have one here and one here, because it won't center that way as well. But if you got at least three, again, like in a peace sign, it's going to give you, it's going to center it. But the more you can get in it, the better. Also, if you guys can see, like, this, well, you can't see much of the line, all of it, but you don't want the glue to go all the way up here, right? So when the top plate sets on it, you're going to cause glue to get down into the gap. And when glue gets beyond that, it can stick out, and, your coil can rub in there. So what we're going to do is just test fit everything, and that's what I tell you, you should do as well. Just test fit everything. So you want the shim to go down, into, if you're doing something like this, it needs to go down into the ferrite. If you're using, like, popsicle sticks or whatever, just set them in there and make them, tall enough that it's going to clear this. So what you're going to do is just test fit everything. So what we do is put it on here. Now, what I was telling you with glue, right? Like with your adhesive, you want some really good epoxy, and put it on the ferrite. You want some really good high temp epoxy and something with really high tensile strength. And you don't need to go any further than however wide the slug is. You only need to go up about halfway, guys. Because when this top plate, sets down on it, like you loosened all these bolts and the top plate's setting down on it, it's going to cause that glue to the epoxy to disperse. So about halfway, is plenty fine, because it's going to squeeze out. If it comes out this direction, that's fine. Take a Q-tip, spin the motor, hold your Q-tip right here to the top plate and the ferrite, and just hold it there and just wipe it off. And anything that comes onto the ferrite itself, you can take a towel or a rag or whatever and just wipe it off, because your motor boot's going to cover it anyways. It's fine to come out this way, you just don't want it getting in the gap. So now, see guys, I got this set up here, right? And it's it's centered. So what I'm going to do now is pause the video. I'm going to start loosening these bolts up, and then get this top plate down closer to the ferrite before I get my epoxy set up, and we'll go from there and get it set up. I'll be right back. Okay, so as I'm back here, as you can see, like, I've loosened up these bolts, right? And I've gotten the top plate down, a lot closer to the ferrite. And that's going to give me enough room to get my epoxy in there. And like I said, you only want to go about half the distance of the width of the ferrite. And what we're going to do is just, we're just going to get it in there, right? So we just wanted to pause, like I wanted to pause it, you really guys didn't have to see me, like, loosen up these bolts to get it down, As you loosen them up, the top plate's just going to come down. And that's where we are at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up my 2-part epoxy. And I'm going to get that all set up, guys. And so what we're going to do is get the epoxy, put in there all the way around. And once we get the epoxy, all the way around here, then I'll go ahead, loosen up these bolts, and just let it set all the way down until, till they just, come all the way up. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get my epoxy out, get it set up, and get it ready, and I'll be right back.